Hello everyone, it's Maya Zahira here, and I am out at 80 Acres. There's some campers nearby that are having such a wonderful time, and I'm actually out here a day early because one of my Create groups is having a field trip here tomorrow, so I came up early. I've actually had kind of an adventurous day, and I wasn't planning on doing a video. I was planning on just communing with nature, but there were some things that happened today that I feel really called to share. And it's actually dusk now, so I hope the video doesn't get too late. Hope that it doesn't get too late and too dark. So something happened today, and it actually started yesterday, and it had to do with boundaries. And I think that so often in the personal development and healing path, there are so many groups and people who essentially teach that in order to have unconditional love, we should not have boundaries. Now, no one actually comes out and says it in that way, because in that way it's obvious that that's unhealthy. But in many of these practices, that's essentially what's happening. Something that is basically human nature is that when we find a practice or a belief or a system that works really well, then we tend to take it to the extreme and apply it at times when it's actually not appropriate to apply it to that extent. So let me tell you about what happened today. I actually posted about this on Facebook, so some of you already know. I am renting a house from a wonderful dear friend of mine right now, and there has been a bedroom that's been sitting empty for a year, and I have not had a roommate since a year ago. And I haven't found anybody, and that's okay, but I happened to see a flyer out at Natural Grocers grocery store. And I thought, hey, this person is looking for a place to live. It sounds like they're into natural living. Who knows? I'll just reach out and email this person. And I just sent, well, I'm very into safety, so I thought, I don't know this person, so I'm not going to give too many details. So I sent a basic email saying that I have an extra room for rent. And the person responded in a way that they weren't rude, but they said some things that were just a little bit off. I had said that I would want to have a brief phone conversation before we agree to meet. And their response to that was kind of off color. And instead of just respectfully understanding that that's just a safety measure, they just had some kind of inappropriate things to say about that. And so I thought about it, and I thought, I don't feel good about this person. I feel like they're already exhibiting some disrespect and boundary issues. Because, in my opinion, if I'm contacting someone wanting to possibly rent from them, I wouldn't be speaking to them in that way. So I said, okay, well, this doesn't mean that that person's wrong and that I'm right. This is my home. This is my sacred space, and so this is what I'm choosing that's right for me. And so I sent a very kind and polite email, and I explained that I didn't think that it would be a good fit, and I thought, I could just make something up and say that my landlady said no, but I decided to be honest with as much tact as I could. So I was honest. And I explained why I felt that it wouldn't be a good fit. And so the next day the person replied, and that was today. I actually got the email once I was out here getting settled in, ready to spend the evening at 80 Acres. And the email that I received from this, I guess I'll call him a gentleman, was just the most horrible, toxic, venomous email, like the worst email I've ever received in my life. It was like, how dare you call yourself a healer? Because I said that that I work as a healer. How dare you call yourself a healer? And then he went on and said all sorts of really horrible things. And so anyway, I replied politely, and that's the end of it, right? Okay. So I was thinking about that email. Now, I didn't get sucked in. Poor guy, he's got some things going on. I don't know what, but it's not my problem. So I sent him love. And, but I was thinking about how he opened his email. How could you, I forget how he worded it, but, how could you possibly call yourself a healer? And I thought, that's really interesting. So as a healer, I'm not supposed to have boundaries. As a healer, I'm not supposed to have healthy discernment. And I would replace that not just as a healer, but as a spiritual person, as a spiritual, heart-centered person. I'm not supposed to have boundaries. Is that true? No, that's absolutely not true. So as I was going for my evening walk, I thought, I really want to connect with the community. This is actually something that I've seen so often, and I forget how long ago it was. I think it was a couple years ago. I've lost track. I was aware of an issue in the community with, it just happened to be women who were impacted by some men, but it could very well have been the other way around. It's people of both genders can overstep boundaries. But in this case, it was some different women who had negative experiences with some different men in the spiritual community. And there are so many awesome, wonderful men in the spiritual community. These were just a few bad eggs that were doing some things where they were using their power, they were misusing their power. And I learned something very important from assisting with the healing process with those women. What I learned, well, we all learned so many things, but one of the things that I became aware of was that this issue, that in the healing community, that people, and I think especially women, are encouraged to not have boundaries. And it's not so overt that they're taught don't have boundaries, but it's just, taught to love unconditionally. And if something happens that they don't feel comfortable with, they're supposed to just love. Just love, open your arms and just love everyone. And again, I want to say, there's nothing wrong with loving every single person on the planet, no matter what kind of behavior they're participating in. But we get confused. I think so many people, especially women, we don't listen to our gut instincts. And when we speak up, there's mosquitoes out here. When we speak up for ourselves, when we set boundaries, many times we're shamed. And the women that I worked with a couple years ago, they were shamed for speaking up. It was called a witch hunt, which doesn't make any sense at all. They were speaking up against misuse of power. And in this situation, when I spoke up and set polite yet very clear and healthy boundaries, I had someone saying, how dare you call yourself a healer? You're setting boundaries. How dare you? So you see how unhealthy that is. Now, I really think that in the last couple of years, I have seen a lot more people wake up to this issue. And so I don't think it's as extreme as it was before. I think there are more people who are realizing that it is very important to set boundaries and that it's very possible to do it in a loving way, to communicate as lovingly as possible. But sometimes setting healthy boundaries means tapping into that inner lion or lioness. Sometimes we need to do it without sugarcoating it. It depends on the situation. That doesn't mean that it's any less loving. So remember, dear one, how important it is to listen to your gut, to listen to your instincts. If something doesn't feel right to you, you can say no. It doesn't have to make the other person wrong or bad. It just means that it's not a good fit for you for whatever reason. And that person or people can disagree. That's okay. It's up to you to decide whatever is right for you. Now, I want to expand on this. So far, I've talked about issues in everyday life, 3D reality, right? But there's also the issue of healthy boundaries when it comes to energy. And this is something that I teach. I teach workshops on psychic self-defense and healthy energy boundaries. So I invite you to visit my website, www.mayazahira.com. I wasn't going to do a little advertisement blurb. That's not what this is about. But if you want to learn about that workshop, that's there for you. Okay? Psychic self-defense and healthy energy boundaries. Now, some of you are more psychically aware than others, and it's okay either way. But I want to tell you that if you ever go into an environment like a class or, like a class, a workshop, a weekend retreat, some kind of spiritual group, class, workshop, spiritual group, any type of group gathering, or even just, it doesn't even have to be a spiritual thing. It can be like walking into a coffee house, walking into a restaurant, anywhere. Go into any environment, and if it doesn't feel right to you, that might come through in any sort of different way. Like you might get a headache, you might feel unwell, you might feel suddenly stressed out or like you can't breathe. You might feel shaky. Or if you are someone who's clairvoyant, who can see energy, you might see entities, you might see spirits. There's so many different ways that you can walk into an environment and recognize and realize that that environment doesn't feel right for you. And again, it doesn't have to mean that that environment is evil or bad, or that the people are evil or bad. It just means if you walk in there, or if you're in a group and you realize this doesn't feel right to me, you have every right to leave. I experienced a huge lesson. It was a little over a year ago. I went to a weekend retreat that was led by some instructors, facilitators that I respect very, very much, and I still respect them very much. I think very highly of them. It just so happened that, in my humble opinion, that the environment was not properly cleared. The weekend had to do with a process of releasing huge amounts of old trauma, hurt, and pain. This is a very powerful process. And yet, to my perception and my feeling, my experience was that that energy was not properly cleared and cleansed. And so we sat in that toxic waste for the rest of the weekend and just stewed in it. And by the end of the weekend, so many of us felt so sick and exhausted, and we were told that that was normal and it's just part of the weekend. And when I clairvoyantly checked in, when I really looked to see what was going on with the energy, I saw some things that were very disturbing and very troubling. I saw things that I personally do not allow in my energy. And again, I want to reiterate that that doesn't mean that anybody involved was bad or wrong, but I can say for sure that what I was seeing doesn't resonate with my particular radio station. And my radio station is love and light and energy that's from God. And I don't need any cooties attached to me. So that was such a valuable lesson. But you know what? I sat through the whole weekend because I didn't want to seem rude for speaking up. I actually did try to speak up. And I asked questions, and I expressed that I wanted the the environment to be cleared more. And I was told, no, this is all there is. And so I didn't want to be rude. So I said, okay, that's fine. And so I just stayed. I stayed for the whole weekend, and I stewed in all of that energy toxic waste that was not right for me. I do think that there were people who got a lot of good things from that weekend. So for me, when I spent the next couple of weeks really thinking about that experience, I really felt, I felt kind of freaked out about what had happened. But at the same time, I felt so much gratitude for all of the people involved because I had learned such a valuable lesson. And it's this: that if I ever attend a workshop, a retreat, a class, a spiritual group, go to a restaurant or anywhere, a party, and if that energy there doesn't feel right for me, then I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave. And I didn't give myself permission to do that before. Part of the reason was because I had spent what was for me a lot of money on that weekend. And we were also told that if we left early, that we would be staying stuck in our issues. So there was a little bit of guilt thrown in there. So, and I took that in and absorbed it instead of really listening to myself. So I share this story. I waited a couple years to share this story. I share this story with the utmost respect and love because I want to express to you that as you're going through your life, as you're going through day to day, you may encounter some energies that don't feel good to you. And remember, that doesn't mean that any of the people involved are bad. It just means that whatever is going on isn't resonating with your particular vibration. It also doesn't mean that they're lower or you're higher. Just imagine a radio, and there's all these different radio stations. And if you're vibrating at a certain radio station and they're at a totally different one, it just might not be right for you. So remember to listen to those feelings that you get. If you ever get a feeling like things aren't right, you can remove yourself from the environment either temporarily or permanently. It's up to you. And you don't even have to explain it to anyone. It's your right. It is your right to do what's right for you, to take loving care of yourself, to listen to your gut instincts, and to have healthy discernment about what's right for you and what's not right for you. And when you do that, it is an act of self-love, and it's also an act of love to any other people who are involved. It's not a loving act when you just sugarcoat things or don't speak up and just keep your mouth shut and end up staying in an environment that's not good for you. That's not helpful to anyone. So you may encounter people wagging their finger at you or giving you little guilt trips over setting those healthy boundaries, especially if those people are used to you not setting boundaries. When you change your behavior from not setting boundaries to then setting healthy boundaries, sometimes it can really stir things up. And I'm not going to tell any more stories here in this video, but I can raise my hand and attest that it is quite true that if you have taught someone that it's okay to misuse or abuse you, and then you suddenly start speaking up for yourself, it's like you're speaking gibberish. They just really cannot understand what you're saying. So it's best if you set those healthy boundaries at the beginning and set the precedent at the beginning. And if you haven't set those healthy boundaries in the beginning, well, you got to start wherever you're at. So start setting healthy boundaries now. And the people involved just know that they might have trouble adapting, but that doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. Okay? So in this video, I've talked about having healthy boundaries in your day-to-day relationships with actual people, and then also having healthy boundaries with the energies around you. So it's so important, so very important to have healthy discernment. Just remember that it is up to you to be empowered and to choose what's right for you and to say no to whatever is not right for you. And also remember to not bounce to the other extreme where you're walking around the world feeling afraid that things are going to attack you all the time. Because generally speaking, the energies out there and the people out there are good and have good intentions. So find that balanced ground in between where you have an open heart and open arms, and yet you're really listening. You're listening to your heart. You're listening to your gut instincts. And sometimes the loving act is to remove yourself from an environment or to remove yourself from a relationship temporarily or permanently. And it's all part of being a healthy individual on the planet. Now, if you feel like you need some assistance with this, I am available for private sessions. And actually, what I would really recommend most is my class on psychic self-defense. So if you do feel like you need assistance with this, I encourage you to visit my website. And it's my name, MayaZahira.com, MayaZahira.com, and click on the events, and the information will be listed there. There's actually a date coming up very soon in the future from the date that I'm taking this video, but if you happen to visit the website after the workshop, then I will be teaching this workshop regularly, and if you'd like for me to teach your group, then we can set up a private group as well. I really believe so much in this topic that that's why I made such a long video to share with you all today. I'm sending you all my love. Mwah. Sending you my love from 80 Acres Farm. Love you. See you in the next video.